Good morning. I'm Linda Gansky. I'm serving as the worship associate this morning alongside our minister, Reverend Diana McLean, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Mankato. All of you, whether joining us in person or on Zoom, are welcome in this time that we make sacred together. We extend an especially warm welcome to you if this is your first time attending one of our worship services. We appreciate that it can be difficult to cross the threshold of a new church for the first time, whether in person or online. Sunday morning is a team effort, and we are grateful for all those who help make it happen. If you are attending by Zoom today, you are welcome to stay after the service to visit together. For those attending in person, we have refreshments in the fellowship hall after worship. We acknowledge that our fellowship meets on the traditional homelands of the Dakota peoples. In continuing to understand our shared history, accepting responsible for reparations and building relationships in the here and now, we want to go beyond land acknowledgement as we seek to be good relatives. And we have one announcement today. It's in regard to being an honor congregation. This is the letter from Sophia Bentecourt, the UUA president. Dear leaders and congregation, every year each congregation in the Unitarian Universal Association is asked to give a financial contribution to support the wider movement and sibling congregations across our association. This contribution supports the annual program fund, which is the single largest source of income for the work of our UUA. Our support of one another strengthens the covenant among us. Your congregation gave the full requested amount to the annual program fund during this fiscal year of 2024. This means that we are an honor congregation, honoring the covenant between and among our congregations. Thank you. Your giving is a concrete expression of our congregation's covenant with one another and is a recognition that we are not alone, but are part of an association of congregations. This support allows the UUA to serve the diverse needs of the 1,002 member congregations across 5 regions. Congregational giving through the annual program fund makes the work of the UUA possible. Please display this honor certificate, and it's right here, and it'll be downstairs on the bulletin board. And share with your congregation my personal appreciation on behalf of all the congregations that your generosity benefits. Your support strengthens Unitarian Universalism, and it's a vital, liberating message for our time. Together we are organizing for justice, imagining new ways forward in community, and growing spiritually. Thank you for your giving to the annual program fund. You make so much possible. Together, let us kindle a flame symbolizing our co-creation of sacred space at home and in this place sacred by years of love. If you are with us on Zoom, please write in the chat that a chalice is lit on your street. And please say the words with me from the pew cards or the slide. We are a welcoming people of diverse beliefs who commit to nourish the spirit, broaden the mind, nourish the earth, and build community. May this flame we kindle remind us to strive today and every day to love beyond belief.
Our call to worship this morning is Witnesses of the World by Tanya Marquez. It is now when we are called as witnesses of the world to mend it, to change its course, to restore it. It is now when we are called to act on our values, not to hide, not to fear, but to be bold and loud. It is now that we are called to continue to fight for justice, to organize, to speak up. It is now. Let us gather. Let us give each other courage. Let us worship. And in that spirit, I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 389, Gathered Here. I was going to say that we were a little thin on the ground to do it as a round, but I think we can do it. So do we do it once through together and then round, usually? Let's do it once through all together, and then we'll start the round, starting with this side and then this side.
Generosity is one of the spiritual qualities we aspire to and one of the practices we nurture in this community. With our offering, we give of our resources to support the work of this church. We know that giving financially is only one of the ways we support that work. We do it too with our time and talents. All three are necessary for the vital work we do, for each other and for the wider community. Every other month, we take up a second collection each Sunday to support one of our community partners, organizations who are in alignment with our values. Many of you are helping with sign the UU the Vote postcards to help keep Minnesota for all of us. With gender affirming and reproductive rights, gun safety laws, environmental legislation, and so much more hanging on only one or a few legislative votes, we are working with Minnesota UU Social Justice Alliance in the effort to increase renter voter turnout in our area. Since statistically, only about 40% of renters usually vote. Together, we can make a difference. July's second collection will help put stamps on the postcards. Every 53 cents donated will count towards one more stamp on one more postcard. Thank you for contributing what you can as we work together to protect our democracy. For both the regular and second collections, you can give in person as the baskets are brought around, or online using either the QR code on your Zoom screen or on the Pew card or the giving link on our UUFM webpage. If you are here in person but give online, as many of you do, we invite you to touch the basket as it passes you in a small ritual of recognition of your financial commitment to the congregation. Please give as generously as you are able. Our first reading this morning is Standing with Love by Tom Belote. If you're new to Unitarian Universalism, one of the things you will learn is that we are extremely proud of our history. In truth, our history is full of great things, but it also has its share of shameful moments and embarrassing episodes. But we can trace our history and list the myriad ways that we have sided with love. In the Northeast in the 1800s, prominent Unitarians were effective at convincing the public of the inhumanity of slavery, while in California, Thomas Starr King was primarily responsible for keeping the Golden State in the Union during the Civil War. In advocacy for abolition, we sided with love. We were the first denomination to recognize the ordination of a woman. It was in these Unitarian and Universalist congregations that recognized the religious leadership of women that the women's suffrage movement was born. Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Olympia Brown are our religious forebears, but our congregations played a role as well, opening their doors for the suffragettes to organize inside and deliver stirring speeches. In standing for equal rights for women, we sided with love. During the Civil Rights Movement, when Martin Luther King issued his call to Selma, Unitarian Universalist ministers and lay people across the country answered his call. One layperson, Viola Luzo, and one minister, James Reeb, were murdered in Alabama. In Selma, we marched on the side of love, and our blood was shed by violent hate while we sided peacefully with love. More recently, Unitarian Universalists have sided with love with marriage equality. Were it not for the powerful organizing of Unitarian Universalists in states like Massachusetts, Vermont, and Iowa, the equal marriage movement would have moved more slowly than it did. By siding with love, the UUs sped up the realization of equality and dignity for more people in our country. The tides have shifted. Love will win out over fear, love will win out over bigotry, and love will win out over homophobia. If you've ever sided with love, what motivated you? What inspired you? What swelled up within you and gave you the moral clarity and discernment to side with love? Can we side with love rather than being a detached observer of love? Can side with love rather than having a discussion group about love? Whether it's siding with love and with immigrant families, siding with marriage equality, siding with health care that is more equitable, more available, and better serves human need, siding with peace, let us ask ourselves from whence we derive the motivation, the courage, the commitment to side with love rather than sitting on the sidelines of love. Our second reading is Saying No by Amy Petrie Shaw. I have a voice. It is a small voice, perhaps, but it will not be silenced. When you call for Black people to be beaten and excluded and even removed, I will say no. When you attempt to silence Latinx voices, I will say no. When you mock the disabled and threaten the oppressed, I will say no. When you shout your plans for exclusion and division and terror over and over again, I will say no, and no, and no. If you build a wall, I will stand in the way of your builders. If they knock me to the ground, I will lie in their path. If you come for my Muslim siblings, I will force you to take me first, and I will not go quietly. I will say no. If you ask that they register, I will be Muslim or Jewish or Black or Baha'i, and I will be at the head of the line over and over with each thing that you do. You will hear my voice ringing in the stillness, saying no. Okay, please rise in body or spirit, joining in singing hymn number 298, Wake now my senses.
Earlier this summer, I began the coursework for a Doctor of Ministry degree in creative writing and public theology. The creative writing part of that is probably pretty straightforward, but the term public theology often leaves people wondering what exactly that is and who does it. I'll give you a hint, it's not just ministers and theologians. Simply put, public theology is the act of demonstrating or talking about our theology in the public square. It doesn't have to mean speaking or writing done by professional theologians. In a 2020 article in Christianity Today titled "Public Theology Isn't Just for Academics," Susan Cadone wrote, "After the police shooting of Michael Brown in August of 2014 in Ferguson, Missouri, Cornell West and other clergy organized an interfaith service to protest Brown's murder. Young protesters in attendance rejected what they interpreted as theological platitudes offered from the stage," wrote Leah Gunning Francis. Allegedly, a seminarian asked the platform speakers to change their chant from "show us what democracy looks like" to "show us what theology looks like." In effect, asking the ministers to publicly weave the structure of their faith into their activism. Don't tell us, write about it, or preach it. Show us your theology. Show us your theology. That is the demand of the field of public theology. But what does that look like in real life rather than in theory? More specifically, what does public theology look like for Unitarian Universalists in this era? As you might imagine, it looks like many different things. different ways of demonstrating or talking about our theology in the public square. Let me give you a few examples. A few days ago, my colleague Evan Carvel-Ziemer wrote in a publicly viewable post on Facebook, "My UU values support and protect trans people and trans kids. I proudly wear my t-shirt that says so. See comments for a link where you can buy one and support trans UU activism in Florida." Evan continued, "So proud, grateful, tearful to serve a Unitarian Universalist association that proclaims this and overwhelmingly passed a business resolution calling us to and affirming us in the ministry of protecting and supporting trans people at a time when our well-being is under attack. See comments for a press release on this business resolution that you can share too." Both Evan's post and the wearing of the t-shirt, which is identical to this one, which says, "My faith is love and protect trans kids," with the hashtag UU values and our flaming chalice symbol over a trans pride flag. Both the t-shirt and the post are acts of public theology. Both the shirt and the post make an explicit connection between Unitarian Universalist values and supporting and affirming transgender people. Given the very public statements that some other faiths make attacking transgender people, it is crucial that we provide an alternative, that we demonstrate that not all people of faith, not all faith traditions share those harmful ideas or others. And this is not anything new. When I was in my 30s, long before I was a minister, I was living in Spokane, Washington, and active in the UU church there. During that time, Gonzaga University, a local private Jesuit university, was giving students class credit for protesting outside Planned Parenthood with horrifyingly graphic anti-abortion signs. Our minister and several church members volunteered as clinic escorts, walking patients who came to the clinic for any reason, from their cars to the clinic door, doing our best to shield them from the protesters and their signs. Our minister, who very rarely wore a clerical collar, wore one when he served as a clinic escort. He was clear that part of his role there, and ours by extension, was to demonstrate that not all clergy and not all congregations are anti-abortion. Our visible presence showed those patients that there was a church that would neither condemn them nor turn them away, no matter what services they were receiving at the clinic. Beginning during my internship at the encouragement of my supervising minister, I too began wearing a clerical collar when doing what I now understand as public theology. My internship started just days after the murder of Michael Brown in Ferguson, and although we were far away in Colorado, there were vigils and marches and events to support the Black Lives Matter movement, and I went in my brand new collar. I was never a speaker at those events, just an aspiring ally, wanting to use both my privilege as a white woman and my position as a clergy person in training in service to those who were at the center of the harm being done. Over the years, I have worn my collar at racial justice events, in court supporting congregants who were on trial, at immigration justice vigils, on the steps of town halls and state capitals for a variety of events, at Pride Fest in multiple locations, including here in Mankato, and many more, some of which I'm sure I've even forgotten. I've come to understand that as a queer woman, just being publicly visible as clergy is actually an act of public theology, a statement that in our faith, both women and LGBTQIA folks are welcome not only in the pews, but in the pulpit. And that is a powerful statement in a time when there are still many faiths in which one or both of those details of my identity would bar me from serving as clergy. Public theology has been an important part of my ministry from the beginning, and in hindsight, as shown in the Planned Parenthood story, actually long before I was a minister. I'm not sure that back then I would have recognized what I was doing as public theology. I probably did think of theology as something done by professionals who had been to seminary. I would have thought that that was what my minister was doing in his collar, but not me in my street clothes. The phrase I have used for most of my participation in that kind of on-the-streets justice work is public witness, which, if it is grounded and expressed in theology, is, of course, public theology. The expression part of that is key. Actions that are grounded in theology are only public theology if others are made aware of that grounding. Public theology means making explicit to others the theology behind the good work that we do in the world. Earlier this year, we had a worship service celebrating the many, many ways that members of this congregation make the world better through volunteer work of all kinds with a wide range of organizations. The question as it relates to public theology is, do the people that you encounter in that volunteer work know that you're doing it grounded in Unitarian Universalist values? Now, before anybody panics, I am not suggesting in any way that each of us should be constantly talking about our religious identity. I know that we generally shy away from being perceived as pushy about religion or evangelical in the lowercase e sense of the word. And our values certainly do not include trying to convert people who are happy in another faith to Unitarian Universalism. But other faiths and their members are already talking about their values in the public square, making explicit their theologies, some of which do great harm to people that we respect and love. And if we do not put our values into the public square alongside theirs, I believe that we're missing several important opportunities. First, and most obvious maybe, is the opportunity to introduce people to Unitarian Universalism. We have something special to offer, and there are people who would be glad to find it. Second is the opportunity to have genuine interfaith conversations as equal partners, even when it may be difficult due to our disagreements. And third, the opportunity to present an alternative view to some of the harmful religious messaging on issues in the public square. For example, any of the many ways that we live out our belief that all people are inherently worthy. Public theology is often assumed to be Christian public theology. In fact, that's even something I encountered in the readings for my first doctoral class. I can't tell you how many times I wrote in the margins of books, not just Christian, as they would talk about what Christians do in the public square as part of public theology. But we Unitarian Universalists also have a theology. And if we allow a certain segment of Christianity to be the only loud voice in the realm of public theology, we are ceding ground that we may not be able to regain. Now more than ever, a progressive voice is needed in public theology. And while we are not the only ones with a progressive religious voice, we need to be part of that larger progressive religious voice. In my doctoral program, cohort of 24 students, I am one of 2 Unitarian Universalists. Both of us are non-Christian and in fact non-theist in our personal theologies. The rest of our cohort members are Christians from a variety of Protestant traditions. The school itself is Presbyterian. As Unitarian Universalists, my classmate Jim and I are in the minority in our cohort, just as Unitarian Universalists are in the minority in wider society. We could allow that to silence us, keeping us from speaking about how we may see something differently from the dominant perspective, but we don't. We take the risk of vulnerability by sharing our true theologies, our true experiences of being religious outsiders in some contexts, and our true beliefs about whatever the topic is that we're discussing. Classmates have thanked us for what we contribute, how our divergent theologies make the conversation richer, and expose others to perspectives they may not have heard before. We do the same in wider contexts. Many of you have heard me tell stories of my experiences at our Pride Fest booth last September when I offered glitter blessings to Pride Fest attendees. As I applied the glitter gel, I looked people in the eye and I said, "May you know that you are sacred. May you know that you are loved." The reactions ranged from happy smiles to tears, and more than one person's eyes widened in surprise at that message, not what they expected from someone in a clerical collar. One young woman said, "You have no idea how much I needed to hear that." You have no idea how much I needed to hear that. We have no idea how often someone may think that in response to our acts of public theology without saying it out loud to us. Public theology may sound academic and removed from real life, but in fact it can be life-changing, even life-saving, in ways that we may never know about. In a 2009 article for the International Journal of Public Theology, David J. Neville says, "We can measure the value of public theology by the extent to which its voice challenges and unsettles entrenched structures that make injustice systemic and thereby endemic." The example that came to mind when I read that was that in 2003, when the Unitarian Universalist Association's headquarters were still at 25 Beacon Street in Boston, next to the Massachusetts State House, the UUA hung banners on the side of their building promoting marriage equality so that both legislators and activists would see them and perhaps be inspired or fortified. We are obviously not next door to the Minnesota State Capitol building, nor even in a highly trafficked downtown area here in Mankato, so hanging banners on our building would be less impactful. Don't get me wrong, the signage that we have inside and outside our building matters to those who come here, but it isn't exactly out in the public square. So what does public theology look like in our specific context? It looks like all the times that we take our actions and our words when we leave the building for the public square, which we do both collectively and individually. Here are just a few examples. Public theology looks like doing pro-democracy work through UU the Vote and other organizations, and explaining how that work relates to our Unitarian Universalist values. It looks like marching in the Pride Parade with our church banner and having a booth at Pride Fest, staffed by me as your minister alongside some of you as congregants, where we express our full inclusion and celebration of LGBTQIA+ people in our congregation and our community. It might look like having a float or a group of marchers at local parades other than Pride Fest, making ourselves more visible in the community. It might look like wearing t-shirts like this one and being willing to engage in conversation about it when people ask. It might look like talking to coworkers, neighbors, and friends about our Unitarian Universalist values and how they inform our daily lives, kind of like the two boys in our story this morning and their families talked about their religious beliefs. Again, I don't suggest that we do that as a speech intended to recruit or convert people, but as a natural part of the conversations we find ourselves in. Sometimes this will have the added benefit of helping people who are seeking a progressive spiritual home to find us. It was a conversation with a coworker of my mom's that led my family to our first Unitarian Universalist church, and look where that has led. I'm sure that many of you can think of other ways that we perform public theology. These acts are more than just public relations to attract people to our congregation, though they may also be that. But the driving purpose of public theology is not to grow the congregation, but literally to change the world. The actions may be small or large, but they all have potential ripples out into our larger societal systems. In her article, Codone says that public theology can change or can challenge the systemic social problems of racism, sexual abuse, misogyny, and domestic violence with courage, hoping for change, not retribution. We make our public theology compelling, she says, by being willing to walk boldly into the public square and engaging society with our beliefs and experiences. I wonder what might happen if we all tried an experiment and started actively looking for opportunities beyond the ones we're already engaged with to go boldly into the public square and engage society with our beliefs and experiences. Codone ends her article with this call to action. Our theology matters, and now is the time to share it. She was writing for a specifically Christian audience in Christianity Today, but her message applies to us as Unitarian Universalists of all personal theologies as well. Our theology matters, and now is the time to share it. Our denomination has just updated its bylaws at this year's General Assembly to reflect that our values are grounded in love. I think we can probably all agree that our nation and the world could use more love right now. We are living in an era when our message of love and inclusion and pluralism and justice is as sorely needed as it has ever been. May we have the courage to rise to the occasion by being public theologians. May our public theology change lives and change the world. May it be so. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 1014. If you're reading from the Teal hymnal, please remember that the language has been changed from standing on the side of love to answering the call of love. We're going to use a recording for this one, which does also have the lyrics on the slides. It does not have a piano lead-in, and this might be a little tricky for those of you not familiar with it yet, so just join in whenever you feel comfortable doing so.
1, 2, 3, 4. Of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide.
As Reverend Diana extinguishes the sanctuary chalice, please extinguish your chalice at home and say the words with me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
As we prepare to leave our time of shared worship, may we, in the words of that hymn a moment ago, dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. May we be emboldened by our faith to engage in public theology. May that be our practice and our prayer. I now invite you to turn toward each other for our singing benediction, blessing each other with these words, knowing that we are each a blessing to each other.